On the biggest day of his father's life, one little boy stopped everything with just 4 words: stop the wedding. What he uncovered wasn't jealousy, it was a deadly plan. Insurance fraud, a staged accident, a woman with a hidden past. But no one saw it coming, except him. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about courage, family, and the strength of a child's love, based on true events. The wedding he saved, only on this channel. 8-year-old Aiden Monroe gripped the velvet ring pillow with sweaty hands, his little chest rising and falling beneath the miniature tuxedo that matched his father's. From the outside, he looked like the perfect ring bearer. Neatly combed curls, polished shoes, and a brave smile. But inside, his stomach twisted in knots. His father, Michael Monroe, stood proudly at the altar of the grand chapel, a place soaked in golden light from stained glass windows. Friends and family murmured behind them, a low buzz of excitement building as the wedding march loomed. Michael looked sharp, shoulders squared in his tailored black suit, his eyes bright with anticipation. This was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. "You look great, Dad," Aiden said quietly, trying to mask the ache in his chest. Michael smiled and winked. "Thanks, champ. You're the best wingman I could ask for." Aiden wanted to smile back. He really did. But his heart felt like a rock in his chest. Because while the adults whispered about love and forever, Aiden was holding on to a truth no one else saw. A truth that made his hands tremble and his throat close tight. He didn't trust her. Her was Vanessa Blake, the woman his father was about to marry. She was beautiful, no doubt. Long auburn hair, ocean blue eyes, the kind of smile that could light up a room. She had everyone charmed. The friends, the neighbors, even Aiden's grandparents. And most importantly, his dad. Michael had been a widower for 2 years, and when Vanessa entered their lives 6 months ago, everything changed. Aiden remembered the first day she came over. His dad had cleaned the house like a madman, made spaghetti from scratch, even though he burned the sauce, and kept checking his reflection in the microwave. "She's special," he'd said. "I think you'll like her." And Aiden had tried. He smiled when she brought him gifts, said thank you when she faked enthusiasm over his drawings. But behind her eyes, there was something cold, something calculating. It was subtle at first, how she always seemed annoyed when his dad wasn't looking, how she called him kid instead of his name. Then there were the quiet jabs, the way she flinched when he asked about his late mom, and the conversations she had behind closed doors, like the one he overheard late at night. The one that changed everything. She was whispering into her phone, pacing the hallway when she thought everyone was asleep. "No, Mark, listen. The life insurance kicks in after the wedding. All we have to do is wait. One accident, that's it." Aiden had frozen outside the door, his heart hammering in his chest. Insurance, accident. Mark. It didn't sound like a bride talking about love. It sounded like a woman planning a crime. He told himself he misunderstood. But then there was the document he found, an insurance policy with his father's name on it. Vanessa listed as the sole beneficiary. That was the moment Aiden knew. She was going to hurt his dad. He tried to tell him. Once, just once. But Michael brushed it off with a smile and a pat on the head. "She's under a lot of stress, buddy. Wedding planning is a lot. Just give her time, okay?" So Aiden stopped talking, and he started planning. Now standing at the altar, watching Vanessa glide down the aisle in white silk, Aiden's heart thudded like a warning bell. Every step she took was one step closer to danger, and no one knew but him. The officiant began the ceremony, his words formal and melodic. Michael looked at Vanessa like she hung the stars. Aiden couldn't breathe. He looked down at the rings on the pillow, symbols of promises, trust, forever. But what if that promise came with a price? His hand twitched. "If anyone has just cause why these two should not be joined in matrimony," the officiant said, "let them speak now or forever hold their peace." The chapel fell into a hush. Aiden felt time slow. He looked up at his father, then at Vanessa. She was already smirking like she knew she had won. And then Aiden stepped forward. "Wait," he said, his voice trembling but loud enough to echo off the marble walls. Gasps erupted through the pews. Michael turned sharply. "Aiden? You can't marry her," the boy said, his voice cracking. "She's lying. She's planning to hurt you." The room went still, and everything began to unravel. The chapel had never been so silent. All eyes were now on Aiden, the 8-year-old boy standing just a few steps from the altar, his small chest rising and falling like a hummingbird. His voice had cracked, but his words had landed like thunder. "She's planning to hurt you." Michael froze. Vanessa blinked once, slowly, her features stiffening, her carefully applied mask beginning to crack. "Aiden," Michael started, glancing nervously at the guests, many of whom had leaned forward in their seats, whispering. Vanessa bent slightly toward Aiden, her smile glued in place but her eyes suddenly razor-sharp. "Sweetheart," she said in a syrupy tone, "you must be very overwhelmed. Weddings can be a lot for kids, can't they?" Aiden didn't budge. "I heard you, Vanessa," he said, louder now. "Talking to Mark. Saying Dad's insurance kicks in after the wedding. You said all it takes is one accident." A ripple of gasps moved through the congregation. Michael stared at his son, then back at Vanessa. "What is he talking about?" She laughed, high-pitched and thin. "Oh my God, you're seriously asking me that?" "Michael, he's 8. He probably had a nightmare or—" "I wasn't dreaming," Aiden cut her off. "You were on the phone. I found the policy on your computer too. The one with Dad's name on it. It said double indemnity." Vanessa went pale. Michael blinked like someone had just slapped him. You took out a life insurance policy on me?" Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it. Her gaze darted across the room. The officiant took a step back. One of Michael's groomsmen stood up, fists clenched. "No," she finally said. "I mean, yes, but not like that. It was just in case something ever happened. You were traveling so much, and with Aiden to think about, I thought it was the responsible thing to do. You never even told me about it," Michael said, his voice suddenly hard. "Why would you hide something like that?" Aiden's voice broke through again, small but steady. "And what about the pictures?" Vanessa stiffened. Michael turned. "What pictures?" "Of her and Mark," Aiden said. "Together. Like they're not just friends." Vanessa finally snapped. "You little liar!" The room collectively inhaled. Michael stepped protectively in front of his son. "You just can't stand that your dad is moving on," she hissed, no longer hiding the venom in her voice. "You've been trying to ruin this from the beginning, and now look, ruining the wedding in front of everyone." "I didn't ruin it," Aiden whispered. "You did." The tension exploded in the room. One of Michael's cousins stepped forward, his phone in hand. "Mike," he said, "I saw her messaging someone named M right before the ceremony. She was acting nervous. Thought it was weird. With it, I didn't say anything because you seemed so happy, man." Vanessa turned sharply. "You people are unbelievable." Michael held up a hand. "No, you're unbelievable." He turned to the guests, to the people who had come to celebrate his new beginning. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think this wedding is over." The officiant quietly stepped aside. The bridal party looked stunned. Vanessa stood frozen, her breathing shallow. "I trusted you," Michael said, staring at her with a mixture of betrayal and disbelief. "I let you into my home. I let you near my son." Her voice dropped to a bitter whisper. "And he's been trying to get rid of me since day one." Michael's eyes darkened. "No, he tried to save me. And thank God he did." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this," she muttered, her voice like ice. "No," Michael said. "The only thing I regret is not listening to him sooner." Security was already moving toward her from the back of the chapel. Vanessa glanced around one last time, then turned on her heels and stormed down the aisle, her heels clacking like gunfire against the marble floor. As the doors swung shut behind her, the tension in the room finally broke. Michael turned to Aiden, knelt down, and pulled him into his arms. "You saved my life today," he whispered into his son's hair. "And I will never, ever doubt you again." Aiden squeezed his eyes shut. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel like a scared little boy. He felt like someone who had just saved his family. The church had never emptied so fast. What should have been a joyful celebration had unraveled into chaos. Guests filed out in a stunned daze, some whispering behind cupped hands, others glancing sympathetically at Michael and Aiden, still kneeling together near the altar. Outside, the wind had picked up. Clouds were gathering, casting long gray shadows across the parking lot. It was as if the sky itself had shifted with the truth. Michael stood slowly, still holding Aiden's hand. His tuxedo now felt too stiff, too formal for the moment. His best man, Julian, approached with wide eyes. "Man," Julian shook his head. "Are you okay?" Michael gave a numb nod. "I will be. But we need to go home." Julian looked down at Aiden and smiled softly. "Kid, you're a legend. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise." Aiden didn't smile back. He was exhausted, mentally, emotionally. All he wanted was for things to go back to the way they were. But deep down, he knew they never would. Back at their house, the silence was deafening. Michael and Aiden sat on the couch, neither saying a word for a while. The wedding decorations were still up, balloons on the banister, floral centerpieces on the dining table. The house smelled like roses and vanilla cake. Aiden stared at his sneakers. "Am I in trouble?" Michael turned to him, eyes wide. "What? No. Nobody. Never." "But I ruined your wedding." Michael let out a soft, humorless laugh. "You didn't ruin anything. You stopped something terrible from happening. You saved me, Aiden. That takes guts." Aiden hesitated. He didn't believe me at first. Michael's face softened, shame flickering in his eyes. "I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to see the truth, because I was so desperate to be happy again. But that doesn't excuse it. I should have listened to you from the beginning." Aiden nodded, small and tired. "I was scared you wouldn't love me anymore, if you married her." Michael's chest tightened. He reached over and pulled his son into his lap. Nothing will ever change how much I love you," he said, his voice thick. "You're the most important person in my life. I forgot that for a while, and I'll spend the rest of my life making that up to you." Aiden leaned his head against his father's chest, the rhythmic thump of his heart grounding him. They sat like that until Michael's phone buzzed. It was Officer Delgado, the detective assigned to Vanessa's case. "She's gone," Delgado said over the line. "We put out a bolo, notified airports and bus stations, but she had a head start." Michael closed his eyes. "What about the guy, the one she was talking to?" "Mark Reynolds, known grifter, used aliases in 3 states. We're building a case. Your son's testimony and the insurance documents he found are invaluable." Michael glanced at Aiden, who was now dozing lightly on the couch. "He's been through enough. I don't want this to become a circus." "It won't," Delgado assured him. "You have our full support. And your son, he's a hero, Mr. Whitaker. He may have stopped a murder." Michael hung up, his hand trembling slightly. Then, he walked into the kitchen and opened the cabinet above the fridge. Inside was the ring box, the one he'd planned to use to propose to Vanessa again on their honeymoon, a secret second gesture of devotion. He tossed it into the trash. That night, he cooked Aiden's favorite meal, spaghetti and garlic bread, with chocolate chip cookies for dessert. They didn't talk much, but that was okay. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was peaceful. Before bed, Aiden hesitated at his father's door. "Can I sleep in your room tonight?" Michael smiled. "Of course." They laid side by side under the same blanket, the weight of what had almost been slowly lifting with each breath. Aiden looked up at the ceiling. "What if she comes back?" Michael squeezed his hand. "Then we'll face her together. But she's not gonna hurt us, Aiden. Not anymore." And for the first time in months, Aiden believed him. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed like a hive kicked by a stone. Word had already spread. By the time Michael walked Aiden into school, parents lingered in hushed huddles, their glances flicking between the boy and his father, with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Some even nodded respectfully. Others just stared. Inside the building, Principal Green stepped out of her office to greet them. "Mr. Whitaker, Aiden," she said, her tone soft. "We've heard what happened. If you need anything, time off, counseling, anything, we're here for you." Michael nodded. "Thank you. He's tougher than all of us put together." Aiden gave a shy smile, then walked to class without a word. Michael watched him go, then exhaled slowly. The kid was holding it together better than most adults would, but not everything was so supportive. Later that afternoon, as Michael stood in line at a local pharmacy, a voice behind him muttered, "Bet he made it all up. Probably didn't want a stepmom." Michael turned slowly, meeting the eyes of an older man in a worn baseball cap. "She tried to murder me," Michael said evenly. "My 8-year-old uncovered the entire plan. So unless you want to discuss that in front of the whole store, maybe take a step back." The man blinked, face flushing, then turned away. The media attention was worse. By the next day, reporters had camped outside their home. Headlines ran online and across news tickers. Boy hero stops his dad's wedding and saves his life. Fiancé's $5 million murder plot foiled by 8-year-old stepchild. Runaway bride or cold-blooded con artist? FBI joins nationwide manhunt. Michael had to issue a statement through a lawyer just to stop the constant door knocks. Aiden's school put him on early release and installed temporary security. Officer Delgado checked in twice a day. But Vanessa, or rather Samantha Holt, as her real identity revealed, was nowhere to be found. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit joined the manhunt. Turns out Samantha had a history. 2 fake marriages, 3 fiancés, all wealthy, all accidentally deceased. 1 boating accident, 1 hiking fall, 1 carbon monoxide leak in a vacation cabin. All had been closed as tragic incidents, until now. Mark Reynolds, her partner and co-conspirator, had been caught at a Greyhound station in Arizona. The agents were waiting when he stepped off the bus, wearing a fake mustache and a hoodie 3 sizes too large. When confronted, he didn't resist. But Samantha? She'd vanished like smoke. "She's good," one agent muttered to Michael over coffee in the station break room. "Smart, methodical, charismatic. You'd be shocked how many men fall under her spell. This is the first time she's left loose ends. Your son may have rattled her." Michael gritted his teeth. "Good." 3 days later, they got their first real lead. Aiden was in the kitchen, drawing in his sketch pad, when Michael's phone rang. It was Officer Delgado. She used her real name to check into a motel in Santa Fe. "We believe it's her. She left in a hurry." Michael's stomach flipped. "What now?" "We flagged every alias, every ID she's used in the past 10 years. She's on the run, but she's sloppy now. She knows the walls are closing in." Aiden looked up from his sketch pad, quietly listening. "Is she coming back?" he asked. Michael crouched next to him. "She won't get near you, I promise. You already stopped her once." Aiden stared into his father's eyes. "If she tries again, I'll stop her again." Michael swallowed hard and hugged him close. "Not this time," he whispered. "This time, we're ready." 3 months passed. The headlines faded, reporters moved on. The FBI scaled back, the tip line slowed, and Samantha Holt, the woman once known as Vanessa, remained a ghost. Rumors of sightings in Mexico, then Canada, then New Orleans, all false alarms. Michael and Aiden rebuilt what had nearly been destroyed. Every morning before school, Aiden now hugged his dad without being asked. They cooked together, Spaghetti Tuesdays were sacred, and every Thursday they visited Aiden's mother's grave with fresh flowers. But some nights, Aiden still woke up sweating, heart pounding. "She was going to kill you," he'd whisper. Michael would carry him to the couch, wrap him in a blanket, and repeat the truth until Aiden believed it again. "She didn't. You stopped her. And we're safe now." One October morning, while packing Aiden's lunch, Michael's phone buzzed. It was Officer Delgado. "She's been found," she said, her voice steady but tense. "Alive." Michael didn't speak at first. He just stared at the phone in his hand. She was picked up outside a pawn shop in Las Vegas using a stolen ID. One of the clerks recognized her from a wanted poster and stalled until patrol arrived. "She's in custody now." Michael nodded slowly. "What happens now?" "She'll be extradited. Prosecutors are preparing charges: fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy, identity theft, possibly more. Mark Reynolds has turned on her completely." Michael sat down, his hands trembling. The past 3 months of tension suddenly broke like a dam behind his ribs. He had imagined this moment over and over, what he'd say, what he'd feel. But now that it was real, all he could do was breathe. That evening, he told Aiden. They sat on the porch swing, the autumn wind sweeping dry leaves across the front yard. "She's been caught," Michael said gently. "It's over." Aiden was quiet for a long time. Then, almost inaudibly, he whispered, "She was going to kill you." "I know. But now she can't." "No, she can't." They sat in silence, just the creak of the swing and the rustle of trees around them. And then Aiden asked, "Do I have to go to court?" Michael shook his head. "Only if you want to. Your testimony's already on file. The evidence is overwhelming. You did more than enough, Aiden. You saved me. You saved us." Aiden finally looked up, his eyes clearer than they'd been in weeks. "Then can we go back to being boring again?" he asked. "Like really boring? Like pancakes and socks on a Saturday boring?" Michael smiled, choked up. "Yeah, kiddo. That sounds perfect." 6 months later, the courtroom was quiet, the kind of silence that vibrated just beneath the surface of every heart in the room. Samantha Holt sat at the defense table in a Navy prison-issued jumpsuit. No makeup, hair matted, her charm was gone. Michael sat in the gallery, not to gloat, not for vengeance, but for closure. His lawyer had told him he didn't need to be there. He needed to be there. The judge recited the charges. The prosecutor summarized the months-long investigation. The defense, in a last-minute plea bargain, agreed to a guilty plea on 7 counts, including attempted first-degree murder and aggravated fraud. Samantha never looked at Michael. But Michael looked at her, and didn't see power anymore, or fear. Just a woman who'd spent so long pretending to be someone she wasn't, that the real her had simply ceased to exist. When the gavel fell and the sentence was read, 35 years without parole, Michael exhaled like he was letting go of a ghost. It was done. It is later. 1 year later, the house was filled with the smell of cinnamon rolls and freshly brewed coffee. Michael, now a guest speaker at a local fraud prevention seminar, was packing a duffel bag while Aiden zipped up his hoodie. They were headed to a cabin in the mountains, just the two of them. Aiden had grown taller, stronger. His teacher said he asked tougher questions than most middle schoolers. He'd started a junior podcast series called Truth Detectives, where he interviewed adults on how they learned to trust or stop trusting certain people. Episode 1? How I Stopped My Dad's Wedding. It had gone viral. Michael let him tell his story in his own time, in his own way. "Do you think people still remember what happened?" Aiden asked as they pulled onto the highway. "I think some do," Michael replied. "But what matters is what you remember." Aiden thought about that for a while. Then he said, "I remember that I was scared, but I told the truth anyway." Michael reached over and squeezed his son's hand. "And that's what made you brave." Later that evening, they sat by the lake in folding chairs, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars blink to life. Aiden looked up and asked, "Dad, do you ever think you'll get married again?" Michael smiled at the sky. "Maybe, if the right person ever comes along, but I'll make sure we both trust her, and I get to interview her first," Aiden said, smirking. Michael laughed. "Deal. She has to survive the Aiden interview before we even talk wedding plans." They both sat back, staring at the sky. "I'm proud of you," Michael said quietly. "Not just for what you did back then, but for who you've become since." Aiden didn't respond right away. Then he whispered, "I'm proud of you too." And in that simple exchange under a starlit sky, they closed the final chapter of a story that had once threatened to destroy them, only to make them stronger than ever. What is the lesson of this story? 1. Truth doesn't always come from the loudest voice. Aiden wasn't an adult. He didn't have power, money, or a platform. But he had the truth, and that was enough to bring down a master manipulator. 2. Trust your gut, even if you're the only one who feels it. Aiden sensed something was wrong, even when everyone else was fooled. That quiet discomfort turned out to be a life-saving instinct. 3. Never underestimate the power of love and loyalty. Aiden wasn't motivated by suspicion. He was driven by love for his father. Sometimes the purest intentions come from the smallest hearts. 4. Standing up is hard. Staying silent is harder. Speaking out nearly cost Aiden everything. But staying quiet would have cost him more. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite it. What do you think about this story? Let's comment below to discuss. And don't forget to subscribe our channel to listen to more interesting stories.